Yo, what up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Pnoid News. Man, listen. So I wanted to stand here and talk about SVP, right? Or SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank that collapsed, and explain exactly what's going on to my people, right? Because our view is more macro than most individuals is, right? We look at things in a different manner. And so I want to actually talk about this in the entirety of the way it needs to be talked about. So, what happened with the Silicon Valley Bank? Well, it's very simple. Silicon Valley Bank has a bunch of bonds that are out with an average rate of about 3%, which means that the amount of money that it costs to get money from the Federal Reserve is at 4.75%, right? And the amount of money it's loaning out at is 3.5%. And with baby boomers standing here retiring and pulling their money the other way, no matter what, no matter where you go, you're not going to be able to get cheap financing like you used to. So America has been kind of cheating, right, when it comes down to like our strategy for creating new tech. And the way we did this was is we had baby boomers have a just giant pile of cash that they threw into their retirement accounts, right? And through this, they were all looking for yield. And when they were all standing here looking for yield, what ended up happening was is that they would invest in things that had a PE ratio, which is the price per earnings, which means like the amount of shares outstanding versus like the amount of like actual profits you make, right? You know what I mean? Will be so ridiculous. Like usually if you want to invest in something that has less than a 5 PE ratio. Well, Tesla had like a 300 PE ratio. This is the problem with most Silicon Valley companies. They don't actually make any money, right? And their stock actually only grows because of the fact that they're gaining market share by not being profitable, right? So when you run your entire company as a loss leader, right, and it's all based on cheap credit and cheap cash, the whole thing comes just raining down in on itself, right? So what happened? Well, basically, the baby boomers' money is drying up due to the fact that they all have to retire. Plus, with the feds raising interest rates, the cost to borrow, right, for banks, right, which is the money market rate, is actually going through the roof. It's at 4.75% for banks themselves, right? So, on top of that, the average person isn't able to take out loans. There's a giant liquidity crisis coming up because the Fed is basically doing governmental theater when it comes down to trying to arrest inflation rates, right? Because the problem is we've been living for very, very cheap for very, very long, right? How did we do this? We did this by having cheap labor, I'm saying, in places like China, right? We did this through having massive amounts of like companies that had very, very low, cost of capitalization and loans, right? And we did this through like having massive conglomerated like corporations that provided us with all of our things, right? Well, that's all gone. Other than the corporations. And even with the corporations, they're noticing that you can't run a company with a 1% profit margin, right? Because like a turn of 1% in the market collapses your entire company. And now you have to borrow at 4%. Yeah. So that means literally you have to make more than 4% on that money. That means you have to raise your prices up past 4. So like your better bet would be 7 or 8 because on top of that, you're dealing with regular inflation throughout the market. So again, this is why SVB actually fell, right? Now, they're going to bail out the people who had accounts there, right? Now, the FDIC has to bail out every account up to $250,000. That's a rule. They're going to bail out all of it, right? And the reason why they're going to do this is because of the fact that they know that they caused this, right? And the market will find liquidity. Like it doesn't matter what you do. the market will 100% find a way to find liquidity because it needs it, right? And so what did they do to find liquidity? They crashed the bank, right? The market crashed the bank. It's that simple, right? We've been running on borrowed time for a long time, and it's not going to work anymore. Our old way of doing things is over, right? We've had a massive boom in a lot of fields, but now if you want to do something, it's going to have to be profitable sooner rather than later. And so people are going to stop just investing in pie in the sky nonsense like, Uber and Lyft and, Airbnb and, all these nonsense, Squarespace and all these companies that just don't make any sense. Salesforce is another one, right? All these companies that don't make any real actual sense, where it's like, what you're doing is you're creating a company from a whole cloth to do something that everybody already does, right? And going, we can do it cheaper if we just amortize it. Not true, because again, in order to get the capitalization for that company, you're going to have to make at least 6% to pay it back. That's simple, right? You're not going to be able to run loans and run credit, long term on just a rate. You're not going to be able to so, all right, I'll give you a really good for instance of this. When Kmart bought Sears, right? What they did was, or Sears bought Kmart. I'll be honest, I'll forget which one it was, right? And it didn't work then, right? But they're still trying to do this now. What they do is they'll stand here and they'll buy a company and then use the company that they're buying as leverage to buy that company. But the problem is they're only buying that company for like a 2%, actual margin. It doesn't work. Anything that you're going to have to buy as far as like conglomerating is concerned is like going to have to be 4 or 5% because of the amount of money that's going to cost to borrow. This is a really basic ass thing. And this is just going to continue to happen. This is just the beginning of all of this that's coming, because they don't the inflation is built into our system right now because you have a mass of retiring workers. You have a mass of shortage of liquidity, and then you have a mass, right, of people who didn't have kids, right? So you have a dearth of children, right? A dearth of fresh workers and a mass of retired workers, and then a shit ton of loans due. Inflation is built into this system because labor will drive inflation. Because when you don't have enough people, right, people will get paid more, which means that things will cost more because of the fact that you pay more for labor. I understand there's a lot of companies that have tried to find a way around this and try to stand here and go, we'll just automate. Well, robots don't pay taxes and they also don't consume. So you're kind of defeating the purpose. The entirety of the ecosystem is, right, that worker goes to work, gets paid, right, buys things, from said company that they work for, right, kind of the circle of money, right, right. That's how all this is actually supposed to work. You can't do it with robots. Just doesn't work. So, I wanted to put this video out here because people have been asking me about it. And I wanted to, drop this for you. Make sure you go watch my cartoon, all right? Legitimately, I don't know what's happening with it. It might not be that good. I'll be honest with you. I got fucking frustrated with it, and it pissed me the fuck off. I might have to, pull it down and re-release it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, look, I'm Tom Pease of Pnoid News. If y'all enjoy this content, like, share, and subscribe. I will holler at y'all later. Peace.